what we did till now. All right. And the Rebbe explained with great length the significance of the fact that the Neshamas Yisrael are based in what's called Odom Kadmon. Odom Kadmon, as we already discussed, means that which precedes creation. In other words, that which the way it is within the Lakus itself. Since that they are rooted in the Lakus itself, therefore that means that their primary essence, their identity, what kind of presence is this? It's a divine presence. Therefore, if it comes to a question of Rahman Sam Mesirus Nefesh, Akidush Hashem, it's a perfectly natural thing to do because this is where they belong. The Rebbe explains more pointedly that this union is really Yerusha from the Oris. And the Rebbe also concludes at the end that this is also, as Yerusha from the Oris, the Neshamas Yisrael have the ability of Avas Hashem, not Avas Hashem that can be contained and understood in the world, but what's called Ava B'chol Me'itcha. B'chol Me'itcha means that this is all they know is Holocaust. They don't Holocaust from a worldly vantage point. The only thing they know is Holocaust. Because that's B'chol Me'itcha, that's their whole mitzvahs. And the Rebbe also said that this B'chol Me'itcha is actually that which Moshe Rabbeinu brought out, even though it is Yerusha from the Obis. It is Yerusha from the Obis. But to reveal it, that they should be felt while they are in the world, this is something which Moshe Rabbeinu affected. This is what Moshe Shufina de Malka. Moshe Shufina de Malka. He ushers in, he introduces to the Neshamas Yisrael the Melech himself. The Rebbe also says at the end of that last top section that Moshe brought about that should be his Gavus HaRotzin. Rotzin is a koich makifi in Nefesh. And from this comes the Inyan of B'chol Me'itcha. B'chol Me'itcha means that their Ahava is not something which is and identifiable on a worldly level, but this is something which is presenting them their whole presence, the whole mitzvahs. All right, this is basically where we're up to. Okay, coming to summer base, starts from the summer base, but calls this entire discussion, who b'makib the ak, is a makib of ak. This is an allusion to what was discussed. The whole discussion till now, starting from a little while back, where the Rebbe asked the question that it is necessary for us to try to understand what is the effect of the makif, of the makifi. On world. Surely there is an effect for the makif, but it is makif. It is above mitzvahs of the world. So in what way does this makif affect, and in what way is it reflected in the world? The makifim itself, the Rebbe identified, named two levels in makif. What's called Tehira Tato and Tehira Ilo. Tehira Tato means the lower makif. Tehira Ilo means the higher makif. So in trying to discuss and understand the effect of makif, we first start from Tehira Tato. Tehira Tato is much closer to the world. And therefore, it is more readily identifiable from the world perspective. Where do you see the presence of makif in the world? That's essentially the question. And the Rebbe said that you see the effect of makif in the world, in the fact that in the world there is the AYIN from bitul in general. And the bitul of Kabbalah Seir Malchus Shamayim. And Kabbalah Seir Malchus Shamayim, that was discussed quite extensively. It is not, as it may sound, something which is forced and imposed on the Yid, but rather this is something which he longs for. The reason it's called Kabbalah Seir Malchus Shamayim, Kabbalah Seir, rather than something that he gets through his seichel, is because it is higher than seichel. But nonetheless, he longs for it. It is not something that's being imposed upon him forcefully, but he really wants it. Why does he want it? Kabbalah Seir? Because he is rooted in that madriga. this is where he feels, so to speak, being at home. This is the reality that he can orient with. The divine presence, this is what's real to him. Yeah. So here is where we identify the effect of the maki on the koyches pnimi, on the seichel. That in the seichel ha'odom, there is a sense of relating to that which is higher than seichel. And it makes sense to him in the seichel. Because this which is higher than seichel, this is actually what he identifies as the reality. Okay. So the effect of the maki of Bodom Kadming is that when Nishamas Yisrael, there is a constant sense of readiness for Mesirus Nefesh on Kiddush Hashem. Because he identified with the Lakus directly. Not from a worldly vantage point, but from a Lakus itself. A Lakus is that which identifies the reality of existence for them. Not as one would think. Since you're in the world, so the presence of the world is what identifies the reality. And then you start figuring out where does the world come from. Not so by Neshamas Yisrael. The primary and fundamental sense of existence is not world. Rather, it is a Lakus. Can we have the air conditioner? It's not going to work. It's getting hot. Huh? No? I'm saying, can we have the air conditioning? Oh, you want me to? Because this general presentation, calls all of this, the general presentation, the principle that there is a recognition of that, of the source, the way it is rooted in the Lakus, and how it then further trickles down into world, translating in the world in the form of Nase Kodem Nishma. Nase Kodem Nishma does not make sense on a simple worldly level, logically. It makes sense because in the world we sense that the real presence is not world but a Lakus. That becomes the fundamental reality, and that is what guides us, our decision. נעשה קודם לנשמה. בכל זה, this entire discussion, who applies and kind of identifies the makib, the ak. In the makib, because as we said before, we are trying to identify what does a makib do for world. And we said there is levels of makib. The first level of makib is Odom Kadli. So we identified the makib, the effect of the makib Odom Kadli. Kol zeh, this entire discussion how makib has an effect on the world, here from Kabbalah Seil and so forth, and you see this nefesh, is identifying the makib of what's called Ak Odom Kadli, which is the lower level of the makib. Namely, in what way is it the lower level of the makib? The Mikol Mocha, that Mikol Mocha means regardless how you identify it and how you relate to it, even though this is a makib, higher than what, yet still, yesh leishachos el ho'elamis. It has some kind of relationship to work. The term Odom Kadmon itself already alludes to the union that has a shachas of work. Because Odom is identifying something which has a worldly a definition. Odom is a structure starting from the highest level to the lowest level. It's not a makib completely remote from world. It has a structure, it has an order. And this is why I say Mikol Mocha, even though it is a makib, but still yesh leishachos el ho'elamis. It has some kind of relationship, some kind of a similarity to world. This is why the effect of this makib can be appreciated in world. I never said Hagam Shuhu B'Bchinas Makib or Rochel. Although it is in a makib manner, B'Bchinas Makib in a makib manner, Horochel, which is distant from world. Nonetheless, we already said Yesh leishachos el ho'elamis. It can relate to world. It identifies world from a higher level than world, from a likus, but still identifies world. Therefore, it has some kind of a shaykhus to world, from a higher vantage, but identifies world as a reality. Valkain, they're on the second line, Valkain, and therefore, Nimshach Mishom, this is why from there, from Madriga, Odom Kadmon, from that makib, can be drawn some kind of a reflection, begilui b'neshamas. Begilui in an appreciated manner, b'neshamas. Neshamas are able to accept and tolerate that view because it is something which can be identified from a world perspective. It's a shachas el ho'elamis. This is what we started in explaining. The lower level of Makif is called Tehira Tato'a. The lower Tehira, the lower Makif. Okay? Now we're going to a different realm completely. Till now we're talking about Makif. That the Rebbe said, talking about Makif, but still it's Makif that can identify the world. Within this Makif there are structures, the Madrigas, Seichel and Midas. Avo, yeah, the end of the second line. Avo, but finished the law. That other level of Makif, which is called Hiru law, the upper purity, the upper Makif. Which has no shaykhs to world altogether. Shezehu, which is Bechinas Hayidul Hagodol, that aspect of Hayidul Hagodol, the great circle, encompassment, Shelifnei Hakal, that precedes the cup. I'd like to put this somewhat in perspective. These expressions, Yigul Hagodol, Shlifnei Hakal, Makif Leilomes, Hiru Lo, Titato. We already discussed it. From time to time, I feel necessity to refresh so that these words would have some form, some meaning. The simplest marshal, which is always the best, the marshal is only an allusion to the AYIN, but it opens up the mind to understand what you're talking about. So to introduce the whole principle, we have to be introduced from time to time. We're talking on the market level. And we spoke about the Hiru Tato, Hiru law. We're going to talk to Hiru law. What is market altogether? So to speak, who needs it? In what way does it encompass and affect the world? So as I said, starting from low down, Moshel. Moshel means a means to identify this, although in a much lower level, but identify the principle that we're talking about. And here it is in the simplest way. In a home, you have a table and a chair, and a slew of all kinds of different things. Each one of these things has a function of its own. I don't have to elaborate on this because we already discussed it. Table, chair, and so forth. Each one is used in a certain particular way, the way what was meant to be used as. Despite the fact that each one has its own use, not only identifiable use, a table is a table, a chair is a chair. Yet, when we speak of a table or a chair, our perception, our focus is not on the particular use of the table, particular use of the table, of the chair. Our focus is how the table fits into the environment in which it is placed, how the chair fits into the environment in which it is placed. The environment in which it is placed is what allows the table and chair to be placed there. The meaning of what allows is to put the table and chair in any place you want. Allows means it fits. It makes sense. When you put the table in the right place, you have identified clearly what the table is about. And you are putting it in place where it belongs. If you're putting it in the wrong place, you're abusing it, and you're not really making any point by putting the table there. Which we already discussed, so therefore I'm just going very brief. This is the principle of the maki. That enables and gives justification for all the details that come forth. So that everything comes forth fits in the general environment. It makes sense that you have a table and a chair and so forth. And everything that is identified therein is identifying the richness of the environment itself. The table does not stand for the table, chair does not stand for the chair. It says about for the environment, the richness and the greatness of the environment. This is a human abode that accommodates everything for the human being. Everything. Before it even is brought into place, it belongs to. This is what's called the maki. This maki that we spoke about, and which we have now identified again, is a maki that identifies the maki for a functional environment. A maki for making a home, so to speak. Which means a maki defining world from within world perspective. So this is like a muscle for the infant Hiratator. There is a maki that enables the development of that which fits in that maki. So therefore, to begin with, the To begin with, before you even identify what you put there, you're already identifying it as part of a world level presence. This is what we call Adam Kadmon. It's a world level presence, even though it's on a makif level. But this makif is what provides for world development. And this is why the Rebbe says, now in the second line, because that he has a shachas to world, Adam Kadmon, Al Kain, for therefore, Nimshach Nisom, this is why from there can be drawn Eze Ha'ora, some kind of a Ha'ora, some kind of a reflection. Begilui B'Nishom, what happened on Sunday?
Okay, it should be fine.
Okay, well, all of a sudden there's, okay. And then is on Ha'ora Begilui B'Nishom. In Nishomes, in the world, they sense this makif because this makif recognizes world. It's called the Hiratato. Okay, now we're at the end of the second line on Oisham base. But however, you're now going into a totally different environment. That Bechina, which is called the Hiru, the higher Maki. Shezehu, which is Bechina to Eagle Hagodl. That Bechina, here we will have to discuss about Bechina for a moment. Bechina's Hoyigul Hagodl, the great encirclement. Shelifnei Hakal, that is needed before the Kal. I'd like to stop here for a moment. And focusing on this principle, going one eagle, another eagle, Hagodl, Shelifnei Hakal, and so forth. What is that? What does that mean? How do we relate? How do we relate to it? Since we talk about the Rebbe explaining it, that means that we should be able to relate to it in our sake. What is it about? So again, looking at it from our personal experience, from our world level, in world, within our experience in world, we'll have to think together about this. Start at bottom up. You have a house, a home. This home is placed in an area. This area is an open area where you can put homes, houses. This open area, even though it's an open area, it is an area that provides where to put up that is suitable for putting up homes. You don't put a home middle of the desert. Before you put a home, there is an environment that is already identified for human dwelling. This is where you put it. Going further out, this environment that's identified for the suitability of a home, that environment itself is also encompassed in a broader encompassment, in a broader matter. When you go out of the city, you're not immediately stepping into the desert or into the forest. You're going out of the city, you're in an area that encompasses the city, that allows for the city to be there. And so forth. These levels of encompassing really have no limit. They have no limit. In the world we talk about a field, a forest, and so forth. But really, in reality, it has no limit. The expression is the sky is the limit. And all the way to the point of reaching the sky, there are many, many levels of encompassment, many levels of identification that permit the development, the internal development. On the simplest level, this is the chart. That there's a room, and there's an apartment, and there is a floor, and there's a house, and there is a courtyard, and there is a street, and there is a neighborhood. All that is part of the encompassing, different levels of encompassing. All these different levels are necessary in order to provide a meaningful support for the simplest thing of putting that chair down on the floor. It's an interesting concept, but it is true. You don't realize you put a chair down and say, I put a chair down on the floor. The various levels of encompassment that make the chair fit this place, be suited that it belongs to. As we go up to the broader market, the broader encompassment, we can identify certain levels which have a more level of identification. But really, here is where it becomes quite challenging and you have to put our attention to. To put it very simply and very pointedly, Again, coming down to the simple level of their home. Their home is a structure, and it encompassing, it has many rooms and so forth. There is an overall meaning to this word home. Much broader meaning than the fact that it encompasses and allows the room for tables and chairs. The broader meaning and more significant meaning for this term home is that this home was built by a human being. This home did not grow out in the wild like a tree grows in the desert. This home was first conceptualized and designed, and the place for it was identified. And it was built according to human specifications. This is the closest level of maki that identifies, so to speak, everything that ultimately develops inside. The broadest and the biggest expanse within this maki was defined and designed by human thought. This is what he's saying with Rashab. It's a very broad maki. But this encompassment is what enables, what reveals the fact that this is a human abode and a permits for human development. This is what's called, what we are learning right now, and this is a sorry for being from Ak. Yes, it is market and so forth, but it identifies with that which is inside it, internal to it. Even though it is infinitely higher and greater. But it identifies with this much, with the world. Bishop says, Maki Odom Kadi. It's a magic, and a very great magic. But it's a magic of Odom, magic that ultimately speaks about human development, a much distant level, but still, this is where it's aiming at. And Bishop Rebbe says, the Mikol Moker. The Mikol Moker means, even though it is a very distant, but still it retains, no matter how distant it becomes, it retains its world level, its world orientation. There is, as you said in the most of the human dwelling, there is a sense that this is suitable eventually to develop a living core, human development. Bishop of the Rebbe says, okay, I'm starting again from some of it, having discussed it. The whole Zen, this entire presentation, that there is different levels and so forth, is the market of the Odom Kad. Is all speaking about the market, starting from Odom Kad. What Odom Kad means that which aims, even though it's a very distant, but it aims towards providing for Adam. Therefore, the Mikol Mokoi, that regardless of its level, of its distance, still, Yeshli Shaychos Eloi Lovis. He has some kind of a shaycha, some kind of a relationship, some kind of an aim to work. It's a makif which provides for eventual development of work. Hagam shehu b'bchinas makif haroch. Although it is in a makif manner, which is rochim, which is distant from world, still, no matter how distant, he has a shaykhus to work. In a distant way, it provides for work. That's what we said in our motion. The fields around the city are very far from the city, but they provide for city as a motion. This is the Maki Baruch, the Maki, not Maki Baruch, the Maki, which is by definition distant from work. They came, and because of this, because of the fact that this had some kind of relationship to world, Nimshach Misham Eza Haora, from there can be brought down, Eza Haora, some reflection, some illumination, Begilui, in recognizable manner, Binisham. So that the Neshamas recognize the divine presence that is provided to them through this matter. Because this provision is something which is not remote from world, it has some kind of a world level definition. And therefore the Neshamas are able to relate to.
10-2 right now, Rabbi.
What?
Just announcing the time that it's.
Oh, time. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Now, Baruch Hashem, we got our manager back. All right. Okay.
So
it's
now
it's a good spot to interrupt. We'll start the meeting next time. The end of the second line.
we can ask a question now.
Yeah, that's what the manager said.
Is there anybody in the chat room? Shlomi Yenifeld?
Let me check. One sec. Chatters? Nope.
So my question is, yesterday we spoke about Panemius Ak as being the source where the neshamas are mishroshim there, and now we're going back to speaking about Ak Stam. Is the Ak that we're talking about now? It doesn't matter whether it's Panemius or Chitzonius.
That's right. That's right.
It still has shaykhus to Olamais.
That's right. That's why it's called Odom. Even Panemius has a come.
And even though we said Panemius Ak is actually before the Tzimtzum, and yet still over there, it has shaykhus to Olamais.
That's right. This is but this is saying is this. World creation that has to go to Tzimtzum and so forth. And again, using a very simple model. There's a king who is in his palace. Then there's a courtyard of the king, and then there's this capital city, and all kinds of different things which clearly allude to the fact that the king is someplace around. You move out of that, and you go into the general area, in general city, or even suburb, and even distant field level. These are a place in this country that does not relate to the king.
No,
It's a
there is
country.
not.
What?
No, there isn't. It's his
There is
country.
not. There is not. Exactly not. In other words, the principle of the king is not just the king's glory. It is providing for a full-fledged presence, a worldly level presence, supporting everything, from the greatest scholar to the simpleton to the garbage collector. Imagine a country without garbage collection.
Well, we've had that here in New York from time to time.
And you know something? Our garbage collectors have their special uniforms, and they have their special trucks, and they have their special privileges where they can stop, where they can put everything. Okay. Anything else?
So this is all, even though it's so removed, it's all still shayach elements.
That's right. No. What you're trying to say is not, of course it's this is world. The point is that it's sourced in the highest levels. In Ak. That's it.
Even in Panemius Ak.
Even in Pnimis. That's it.
Are we going to, I'm sorry, one last thing. So are we going to explain, I guess we are eventually, the whole business of the eagle hagodol shalifnei hakav?
We're first coming to that. Oh boy. Yeah.
Well, you read it today.
I read it, and this is just a kind of a warning. Here's where we're going. But we could not,
We couldn't.
we can't really, to get into this, you have to really kind of introduce it and go and have plenty of time, several days in each of them, hopefully.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Okay, so I'm just going to sit and wait for that. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're up to that, Exus. You're.
No, I don't know if I'm up. I'm just going to wait. You read the words. I'm conscious of them.
Yeah, well.
It was a preview of coming attractions, basically.
That's right. Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? All right, since there's no other questions, so I'm going to introduce further the coming attraction, as you call it. You just finished saying, what? Somebody saying?
No.
You just finished saying that the garbage collectors in a properly organized environment, city, have their rights. in terms of traffic, where they park the car. And not only that, they also have the uniforms and so forth. It is important to reflect and to understand that this phenomenon, that the garbage collectors are also identifiable as being city servants and all other things that come with it, is not merely because it happens to be a necessity. Otherwise, we'll be burying garbage. It's kind of an afterthought. Garbage began to accumulate, therefore, we have to provide for it. The real truth is as we always say, you take a fruit and you eat a fruit. You cannot eat a fruit without peeling off its clipper. Take an orange, a beautiful, rich fruit. The orange, in order to protect its inside, has a thick skin. This thick skin is part of the design of the orange. If the orange should come without the skin, it would not last, not provide its richness. In other words, in order to bring things down into the world, the clipper part plays a very important role in the entire presentation. It's not an afterthought that you have to throw something out. It's a necessity. It is part of the richness, the fact that this is the richness of the world that there is, that the fruit has a clip.
One more time. The beautiful orange has a skin that you throw away, and that's indicating the richness of the world because
Because, yes, can you finish it? Because the world ultimately is focused on the inside of the orange. And it's focused on the inside of the orange in its purity.
and therefore
in order to present it in purity,
to accomplish that, it has to be wrapped up.
That's right. It has to be protected from outside effects.
Has to be protected. I mean, you could go the other way, that this is such a harsh, low world that things have to be wrapped up and protected. There needs to be security and locks on your doors. You could go the other direction, but we're saying no.
Well, no, you have that direction too. And what is that direction allude to? Let's understand. A human being, this is kind of an allegory. A human being has a brain. That's a human being. Can you have a brain without feet?
No.
Two people have to discuss things. They're discussing it on the basis of their thoughts and their brain. But in order to come together, you have to have feet to get together.
Right. I guess this goes back on the difference between the Rambam and the Ramban yesterday. Chayes nitzchi beguf or not, right? So there's a mile in a guf. On the other hand, it's a problem.
Right. Okay. All right. But there, the Rambam and the Ramban, the discussion over there is about the result, the reward for the avodah. We're not talking about the avodah per se. There is no dispute between Rambam and Ramban as to the period of the avodah itself, that it involves all kinds of refuse, all kinds of avodah purification.
Hmm.
The reward for the avodah, this is where you're talking about what is the ultimate reward, where there is no klipa or there is klipa.
Okay, but our point today is that the klippa itself is indicating the richness of the world.
That's right. That's right. Just as in a human being, he has the brain, but he also has hands and feet
Yeah.
and a mouth. He's able to communicate with another human being with another brain at the worldly level. In Hasidus, we learn Hasidus, and Hasidus, we all recognize it's very fine and very deep and very high. It's full of what's called the Misholim. What's a Moshel? A Moshel is to enable you to understand the higher Zionim from a lower vantage point. And what's the point of that? The point of that is to bring a Lakus down all the way into the worldly level.
You are making a comparison between the feet for the brain and klippa in general. You may think that the feet for the brain is part of the overall human structure, but klippa is only made to be discarded or destroyed.
True. However, feet that are greater, okay, I'll try to make it as brief as possible. The reason we need feet is that in order that we want to communicate with another human being. This other human being is a full-fledged presence of his own right. Even he is a full-fledged presence of his own right, he has a body that contains him, because the communication is with his brain. But in order to reach his brain, you have to first greet him at the bodily level, because he is a full-fledged presence. In order to be a full-fledged presence, he has to have a body.
Okay. So klippa here is indicating a full-fledged presence. It's not just the husk that has to be discarded, but rather it's a something in its own right. It's part of the creation and the presentation in its own right.
That's
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. Hmm.
one of the principles of human behavior is that a human being has clothes. He covers himself. Does he cover himself because he's ashamed with what he is? No, not at all. What then is the covering? The covering is that the human being represents from the highest to the lowest, from the brain all the way to the cortex of mice. When a human being needs to employ and focus on a higher level, like in the heart and the brain, he has to cover everything else so that it doesn't interfere, so that you can speak purely about brain in on it. Not be distracted, not be in an environment that is a completely different level than what you're discussing. This is why you put on clothes, to say right now we are dealing that which is exclusively on the level of the head. Everything else has to be covered up. Not to cover it up and leave it open and speak about finest and number of the brain is profaning the brain function.
Right, that's this world, but in Gan Eden there was not that problem, but that's how it is here.
That's right. The reason Gan Eden was not a problem because in Gan Eden they were not in a worldly orientation. When you are in the divine orientation, then everything is in a higher plane. Because on the divine level, the high and the low are all focused on one thing, on the divine service, exclusively.
Yeah.
All right.
The high and low are focused on what exclusively?
On the Elikus,
I like
on the
this.
divine service.
Service. Okay. Yeah.
I have a quick question. I woke up late. I missed half of the shiur. I want to know, what did you do today? Did you do the kitzur or you went on to the next paragraph?
We went on. We mentioned the kitzur, but we did not go to the kitzur. It would take us too long. We went straight into summer place.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.